The notes that we will be looking at is the Great War, World War One. World War One was not titled World War One until World War Two. This was originally titled the Great War or the War to End All Wars, because the idea was that this was the big war that was going to end any other future conflicts between nations, which we've realized has not been the case. Keep in mind you are taking Cornell notes, so please make sure that you are taking the style of notes there. We're going to be looking at the U.S. enters the war. We're going to be looking at several factors that caused the United States to enter World War I, even though many were trying to avoid that happening. The first point is unrestricted submarine warfare, and that is Germany's attack on civilian vessels. Originally, this was not an attack on civilian vessels. This originally was a policy that Germany had, where Germany was trying to break up England's naval blockade. So originally, the German submarines were attacking the English Navy, but then this turned more towards civilian vessels. As you can see right here with the map, England would try to break up Germany's supply routes there, and so Germany would start using submarines to attack without warning, but this ended up being on civilian vessels. England had violated the Declaration of London, and so England actually was at fault here for putting up this blockade and not allowing Germany to trade with her neighbors and with her allies. And so Germany felt it okay to start sinking ships without warning. This is important because the Lusitania would get sunk in May 1915. And this is the most famous vessel, as you can see right here. Other vessels had been sunk as well, but this was the most famous one. U.S. citizens desire immediate retaliation. So the United States citizens are wanting the president to get involved and to basically tell Germany that they cannot sink civilian vessels. President Wilson gives them a mere warning of war if another boat is sunk, and so the Sussex Pledge that Germany would sign would be an agreement not to sink civilian vessels. Now you're probably wondering to yourself, why are they sinking civilian vessels? Well, these vessels are oftentimes carrying weapons and other goods to the Allies. America at this time period was selling to Great Britain and to France, and so Germany was not wanting the United States to be selling to them, and so Germany declared any vessel that was carrying any type of weapons or goods to the Allies, to the Britain and France, would be sunk. And so, as you can see right here, there's a lot of espionage happening, a lot of mistrust, and so Germany feels like they are up against the wall, and so they start sinking civilian vessels. The second reason that America gets involved is the Ervin telegram. This is a message that proves that America was allying with Germany, which threatened the U.S. national security. We had always suspected that the Mexicans and the Germans were friends, and there's a lot of culture mixed between the two, brass, instruments, alcohol, beer, and also the accordion. Those are things, polka music and Mexican mariachi music, very similar. And so Germany right here, they're trying to get Mexico to ally with them to attack America with Germany's support. Now, this is obtained by the British intelligence, MI6, but they don't disclose it to America until 3 months later in March 1917. And the reason for not disclosing it to the United States just yet is that they wanted to give it to America at the right time. They wanted to show that Germany was trying to instigate something against America at the right time. And so they don't show it initially when they get it to the United States, but then they disclose it later on. The third reason is Russia exiting the war. Now, you probably are wondering, what is the importance here? Well, Russia erupts into revolution. The Russian people start revolting against the king, the Tsar Nicholas II, in March 1917. Picture of Tsar Nicholas right here, the Romanov dynasty. And the reason that they erupt into revolution is that the Russians are tired of fighting this pointless war. They feel like it's Nicholas's war. This is just the government's war. This is not the people's war. And so they erupt into revolution to stop fighting in World War I. And they turn into a communist country led by Lenin. They form the first communist state, the people rising up against the kings. This is important because World War I starts to become about democracy instead of just a pointless war. This starts being a war about America, Britain, France, democratic nations fighting against ruthless nations. And so when Russia was siding with France and Great Britain, they were a ruthless nation. They were a monarchy. And so now this war becomes about democracy versus monarchs. So America starts feeling a need to get involved. The fourth reason here is that America sides with Britain. This is a picture of the British Prime Minister, David Lloyd George. Quite a nice walrus mustache there. The reason that we side with Britain instead of Germany, because keep in mind that there were a lot of American Germans here in America that would have liked to side with Germany, but the reason that we side with Britain is because there's this tie to democracy. We feel like we have the birth of democracy being in America, but really a lot of ties from Britain. There's also an ethnic, cultural, and economic ties that link us greatly to Britain. England prohibited U.S. trade with Germany, which we're going to get into in a minute. And so we really have this tie with Great Britain that makes it important for us to fight on the side of Great Britain and to make sure that Britain doesn't fall to the Germans. The last point here is America's recession. So America is going to go through a recession in the early 1900s, believe it or not. Even though we have this huge industrial revolution time period, the progressives are going to put much of a halt on a lot of the industrialism, and so there's going to be a recession, a relapse in the economy. And so Americans are trying to use the Great War to boost her economy. The way that we do this is by selling to Great Britain because we can't sell to Germany because of the naval blockade they have. We start to strengthen our ties with the Allies, and then thirdly, we allow the Allies to borrow from America. And so we start becoming kind of a creditor, a lender, if you will, with great interest to Britain and France and Russia. And so we feel like if we get involved in the war through economics, that we're able to get out of our own recession. And so if we feel like we truly become isolationists and just leave World War I all to itself and don't trade with anybody, that'll hurt our economy even worse. The original campaign slogan by Woodrow Wilson would be, "He kept us out of war." Woodrow Wilson was very much into not getting involved in World War I. He thought that was Europe's fight. So he continues this neutrality into his second term with this campaign slogan, "He kept us out of war," during his first term. However, the tune is going to change a few months into his second term, and he starts saying the world must be safe for democracy. So again, that issue of democracy being preserved. Due to Germany's renewed sinking of U.S. ships, Congress approved his request for war on April 6, 1917. So Germany breaks the Sussex Pledge and starts to sink more U.S. ships bound for Great Britain and France with supplies, and so we go to war. Woodrow Wilson asked Congress for approval to go to war to protect democracy. This becomes a progressive crusade, and World War I was really the end of the progressive movement in that this is big government regulations and intervention would reach its height. So this is a progressive movement where people are trying to change society or even change the world, not just America, through big government. And big government is going to use war to change the rest of the world. Last slide here, Selective Service Act. So America's Army only numbered 200,000 right before World War I started, so we needed to issue a draft. If you remember, a draft is where the government selects people randomly, men randomly, between the ages of 18 and 35 to serve in the war. By the end of the war, 2.6 million would be drafted. There would be others that volunteer, but 2.6 million would be drafted. Thank you for taking these notes. Make sure to review your notes and place that one sentence summary at the end and be prepared to share in class. Thank you.